Welcome to the online teaching segment concerning social organization and kinship. Kinship, I should say to begin with, is a difficult thing to visually show in many cases. It's hard to document in the abstract because it's really a lived experience that comes through interactions in various kinds of events. And among the Gebusi, as among many other peoples, one of the events that really displays kinship more actively are major celebrations or feasts, when lots of different people come together and social organization is strongly in play, and a sense of connection across different kin groups is evident. In the case of the Gebusi, it's a number of different kinship groups and clans coming together during the central feast, a little bit like if you were living on a street and all the different houses on the street decided to collectivize together for a communal Christmas feast or something like that, that people are getting together. They're residentially proximate, but they actively collaborate in a larger event. Now, this segment has 5 different short video clips. Altogether, they're only about 11 minutes in length. The first of these shows a group of men gathering about a sago oven, and it's important that the men are from about 5 different clans in the settlement, even though they're all together collaborating around this, the cooking. In the second video clip, one sees the making of the oven collectively among everyone with sago greens, and then the third clip adds hot stones that some of the women and others are holding in wooden tongs, putting on top of the cooking area, as well as pork. The pig, which has been butchered for the feast, is added to the assemblage. And then we shift from there to in the fourth video clip, to the distribution of food in the middle of the night. Gebusi tend to have feasts as real party events that begin in the late afternoon or early evening and then go pretty much all night long. And by the time everything is ready to give out, it's pretty dark. And in fact, that particular clip, you'll see more, you'll hear more than you will see because it's in the dark. But the soundtrack is significant. And in fact, in that particular clip, the people who are being given the food are Latham and me. In other words, we are constituted as a separate, distinct subgroup within the village on this particular occasion, and we receive gifts along with everybody else. And then finally, in the last clip, you have groups, subgroups within the community who have their own piles of food that they're going to be giving to each other, and then redistributing in various ways as well. Now, a few points I think are emphasizing with respect to social organization and the Gebusi in relationship to these clips and in relationship to the material presented in class and concerning social organization and kinship generally. First of all, among the Gebusi, the village is composed of numerous, very small patriclans and patrilineages. Now, patrilineages are lines of descent that go through the father's name, through men, and the descent is passed lineally in that fashion, and they're very small. The patrilineages, where they can actually trace descent, are just maybe 3 or 4 men and maybe 5 or 6 people, okay? And the patriclans may be twice that size or so, spread out a little further. And the clan, you can't trace the actual kinship relationship, but you call yourselves all members of the same clan. So in the slides, for instance, in the videos, you see Gigi, Wapsiaik, Yugul, Abras, Mohimar, all these different clans of men's identity collaborating together. And that's very significant because in many areas, clans are many parts of New Guinea and many parts of the world. Clans compete with each other, or they're enemies, or they have large numbers of people that oppose each other. So in this case, you have them collaborating, and they are corporate groups. They have an identity that transcends time. They gain members and have continuity as a group with specific rights and obligations. So they're corporate descent groups, these little patrilineages. And the second point I think worth emphasizing is that intermarriage within Gebusi settlements, and including within Gasumi corners, is very high. Now this means that within the village you have your your out-married sisters or brothers, their relatives, your brothers-in-law, your sisters-in-law, your fathers and mothers-in-law, your cousins and what we would call aunts and uncles. They tend to reside in the village, in one part of the village or another. And so there are not too many of your closer relatives who are not in the village. That means when you have a feast, all your different kinship relationships come into play. Even though they may be in a different little sub-corner, subsection of the village, you see them and you interact with them in a major feast or a major event. Now this leads to the third important point, which is that the integrity of the village, the cohesion of the village to be together as a larger group, reflects and reinforces kinship integrity. So kinship reflects that, but it also reinforces it very actively in collective events such as feasts. So smaller kin groups, such as patrilineages and their larger families, interact and cooperate to create a bigger cohesive group, which is the village as a whole. So that's a very important dimension of kinship in Gebusi society, that the village is multi-clan, but they collaborate together with respect to feasts and special events. Now, during the pre-colonial era, before Western contact came in, it was really important to have a large group of people in the village for defensive purposes, because you'd be subject to raiding or attack by another group, and if you couldn't defend yourself with a large group of people, you would be at risk. And even now, since the warfare has become pretty much defunct, that cohesion is still important to forestall conflicts of various kinds, or be able to mediate disputes where you have lots of kin who can kind of calm each other down and help prevent a larger difficulty when particular lineages or clans get at loggerheads, say over a marriage negotiation, whether they've been adequately compensated for something or other, and other issues of that sort. So fortunately, as I've documented elsewhere, in fact, if you want to look on my website, I have a whole paper which I published recently on this. The Gebusi rate of homicide, which used to be really, really high, has dropped to 0 since the late 1980s, which is a wonderful story in various ways. But the potential for conflict is still there, and the importance of kin groups collaborating to have a larger sense of collectivity in the community is very important. The fourth point, which I'd like to emphasize, is that the Gebusi kinship and social organization system combines strong village cohesion with these subdivisions within the community. And you'll see this graphically in some of the video clips, that although it's one village, which we call Gazumi Corners, there are different little sub-settlements or sub-communities of a cluster of houses or together of family groups that consider themselves to be a small subgroup of one or two related clans within that. And each of these sub-corners has an interesting physical relationship with the other, and they all cooperate around the same cooking fires, but some of them are principally owned by sub-corners and some by others. Even though they help each other, when you see the distribution of food, they each have their own set of plates of rice and greens and tinned fish, which then they will share with each others. Now, this food is then, and this is the fifth point, the redistribution of gifts through kinship lines is extremely important. So you'll see whooping and shouting as people get their plates of food and give it very actively and with lots of joy and celebration to others in the community, to another group in the community. And then they would receive that food, just as we received, Latham and I received our large share of food, more than we could possibly eat. And then we would give parts of it to other people in the community. So there was a redistribution both between the groups, the subgroups in the settlement, and also back and forth between them to kind of equalize the share. So this is kind of a very productive system of exchange through kinship networks that allows a powerful way to connect everybody in the community, including people like Latham and I, who were not members of the community in natal kinship terms, right? So, and if you were a stranger among the Gebusi, then they might give you a gift exchange name, or within the settlement there are people who are really good friends but don't have any kinship relationship. So they establish gift exchange names, and that becomes the means and the vehicle by which a social connection is established. So there's kind of an extension of kinship to relations even between strangers through the gift exchange name system. So amid the general reciprocity, if you looked at these clips, you just think, well, it's just everybody's kind of in a big collective mass. But in fact, all the gifts are very carefully kept track of, exactly who has given what piece of meat or rice, and they actually advertise this when they yell out. They're saying, including for people who are not within earshot, so everyone knows exactly how much food is given. So among the tracking of these different gifts and redistributions, with everybody publicly informed and publicly seeing who's getting exactly how much and how it's being redistributed, there's a careful control and public acknowledgement of exactly what the kinship relations are and exactly who's receiving them. And in fact, it's very important to accept these gifts. And in one part of the feast, they actually whoop and they force people to eat, or they bring big globs of pig belly fat, which is supposed to be a prized part of the animal, and they kind of force it on you to have you eat a little bit to show that you are actively accepting. It's a sense of acknowledging and accepting and reinforcing the social relationship behind which the gift is being given. And the pork, or in this case the tinned fish, is extremely important. Protein has always been important among the Gebusi, and those particular gifts are especially significant. And in the older days, when they had initiations actively, a whole pig would be given for each initiate, and it would be very carefully remembered which parts of the pig were given to which relatives and consumed, even years afterwards. So overall then, social organization among the Gebusi, as in other peoples, is at once very complex and yet seemingly seamless. It has a high diversity of lots of different kinds of relationships which are carefully recognized and delineated, but in this case with everyone still being able to cooperate very happily and with great festivity in a large village across lots of different kin groups through the network and the kind of social glue of this gift giving given along and between family lines. Now, a couple of footnotes, one in particular. If you can imagine the same events that you're going to see in these video clips, but with the men and women with beautiful, bright bird feathers and green leaves in their hairs and body paint and so on, you would have an idea of the way that feasting took place when I was first with the Gebusi in the 1980s. Now, although the clothes may look a little tattered and not so interesting, if you correct for that, the dynamics of the feast, the kinship relations, the social ethic of it is really very similar to the way it was. So it's important, even as things change, that we not be too deceived by the superficial sights of what people are wearing, for instance, which has changed dramatically over time with the Gebusi. So to underscore the general importance of kinship and social organization, if you just saw these video clips without knowing kinship, it would just seem like a big kind of hubbub. And in this sense, kinship, as in many situations, is kind of a hidden armature or a hidden infrastructure around which things really importantly happen. And without knowing it, you really can't understand who's cooperating with who, why certain things are happening, if there's a dispute, why certain people are aligning with who. It's a little bit like seeing a game of football or basketball without knowing the rules if you don't understand the system of kinship and social organization. A little bit on a smaller scale, if you have a large family gathering at Christmas, you're all acting as one collective happy group, at least ideally, but you do keep track carefully of exactly what relatives are giving you what, and the significance of that is very important. Now, two final points concerning kinship, and that has to do with socialization of social organization and its continuity over time. You'll see a number of children in these clips, and they're all just playing happily together, as children would seem to do generally. They aren't taught kinship the way you would learn it in school, or like in an anthropology course where you're learning, definitions and categories and designations, for application. They just act out, and they see their parents and other relatives acting to certain people in certain ways, and they pick up the cue. They learn kinship by doing it. So even a very complex kinship system can be reproduced very effectively without abstract learning over time. Sometimes this has been compared a little bit to the way we learn language. We learn language, our grammar, and the parts of speech and the various ways to communicate with effective language utterances are deeply encoded, but we don't think about the grammar very much. We don't analyze the construction of our daily speech, even though it follows rules that are in large part unconscious or at least implicit to us. And in some ways, that's the way kinship functions in many small-scale social societies and in many communities around the world. And the final point I would like to begin with is that kinship and social organization are, for the Gebusi and for many, many peoples around the world, just about the most enduring feature of their society that one could imagine. Many aspects of Gebusi society and culture have changed, but their kinship system and their system of social organization is very consistent. Even though their settlements are larger, the types and the identities of clan members, the interrelationships, the degrees of co-residence, and the patterns of gift exchange and alignment and division are very consistent over time because of the enduring significance and continuity of kinship and social organization over time. So in all then, social organization and clanship, the way that people form groups together, in this case corporate groups and kinship groups, is a kind of grammar of social life that's a key aspect that comes to the fore in these larger events in small communities as well as those of conflict. So enjoy the video clips and good luck with the questions that follow.
So here we are by the sago cooking. It's called ola or omsum. There's a huge pile of sago flour that's cut down from probably 4 different sago palm trees from different parts of the different kinsmen and different clans have contributed, and they're contributing and combining all their efforts together in this one large sago cooking packet, which has got scraped. I could hear this morning early on they were scraping coconuts as well, and so here everybody's gathered around the sago that's being steam cooked with stones, and they put water on it to soften it up as it cooks with the fogui. And the combination of the sago, which by itself is pretty dry and starchy, and the steaming and the coconuts makes it really delicious. And they'll do another of these ovens later with the pig, which is now being butchered on top of it as well. So I am here ke nia kogwai ke ola ke os ke wa henbo ke hutim ke helemui ke subscribe ke ke hutim henbo ya ko awari ke wa map ma ke gwabmaim ke tirama ke kogwaidama ke fuguinbo ke maumsum. Itawa ke buhen ke henolawa ke boy gisinawa ke ba ke hogite hen emela ke henola ene yolo
ke morwa u hoswa ke ma
Oh, they're also going to cook sweet potatoes, which is not as traditional because they didn't have sweet potatoes as a major crop in Yibihilu, and actually the root crop addition has been a major contribution to the diet, which has helped people be much more healthy as well. So contributing to all these wonderful kids here is the contribution of diverse aspects of diet, including nutritious root crops as well. But this cooking method is quite traditional. You can see that that's wrapped in leaves. You say, how would you make a major cooking like this? There's no clay pottery, no pots traditionally, and so they just build a fire with hot stones, wrap the sago up in leaves, and then tie it up with forest vines. And then this morning I could hear all the men going, whoa, 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 together as they were each of them holding on to one of these poles on both sides and lifting it up together as kind of a collective work ethic that symbolized the coming together of the men from the different clans who had contributed in the sago, and also for the collective feast in which everyone will share. They're quiet for the camera, but in a few minutes everybody's going to be joking again. No tabak baba. No vida. Hey! Hamida. Jovial putting of the greens on the next sago oven. And the kids. Whoa! Festive atmosphere day of the feast. On the cooking fire, you see they've got wooden tongs, very efficient way without any metal tools traditionally. Put hot stones on the fire, more greens, more sago, and then the plates of pork over there. The pig now has been butchered and singed, and then the plates of pork will be put on the sago cooking. A lot of starch underneath, and layers of hot stones being put on. See, and now we're going to take the. This is it's a great hubbub of energy. Conversation is exactly how it should be done, and there's a great sense of collective energy. Everybody cooperating, all the men and women standing around, helping out, giving little suggestions here and there as how everything should be done just properly.
Okay.
What?
Is that your?
Oh, okay.
Que du ado amasan log diga.
Oh, yeah, I need to go.
Que sa from da huida.
Oh, okay. It
Que
is.
na he taste ge que sa fe na huida.
Oh, okay.
Okay, que a dia tu du.
So we just received our traditional, everybody whooping and giving their portion, cut up from different clan members, different corners of the village, each contributing their share to a huge pile of food that they're giving to us. And they just said to be sure to lock the door if we go out, because the dogs will certainly get it. And then we can redistribute this, of course, later. But the important thing is to accept it in good reception first and eat some of it. And then everybody will get some food, and then many people will exchange among themselves afterwards. So this is obviously much, much more than we could possibly eat. But it's the symbolism of it, and accepting this incredibly wonderful gift of pork and cooked sago with greens and coconuts and fish and rice and all good things. This looks like it may be even a whole fish cooked and wrapped.
That's wrapped up.
Yeah.
That's the innards of the cow or the pig.
Okay, so this is pig
innards.
This is pig innards, very carefully wrapped and cooked, which we may sample or may not sample too much, but certainly it will be eaten by somebody. But it was a great and a very joyful, gift from all the different corners of the village, giving food and celebrating the feast. And now we're part of it, so we'll have this and receive it along with other people receiving their share, and then it will all be exchanged back and forth across the village and all the people that have come. So, wow. Woo. So here we are in the nighttime distribution of food. We've received ours. And then here's everybody, I don't know how much you can see gathered around. We'll take a walk around a little bit and see all the different distributions of food and rice and greens and tinned fish of various kinds, and all the different relationships in the community, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, mother's brother, family members. They'll all exchange back and forth and give these gifts to each other within the village, as well as to the few visitors from other settlements who are also here. So every little sub-community has its own distribution of rice and tinned fish, meat that we've given, rice. Oh, hosomi homi! So here. Okay. Hey, hey, he, So they're using, in the old days they'd have the fish and the pig bones as trophies, and now they're using the tins. It's kind of dark, so I'm shining my headlamp in an attempt to get some illumination for the camera, the movie here. So here's yet another sub-corner of Gebusi Corners that has its distribution being readied for presentation to other people. And everybody has their... Oh look, they've even kept a little marker here of they've kept as a souvenir the tag that was on the cargo that came in with the plane, which they've kept as a little bit of souvenir here as well, or to mark, or maybe it was to mark the plates that were going to me when I got mine. So, okay, well I'll sign off for now, and we'll catch back later in the evening. But you can see the general joyful pandemonium in Gebusi Final Feast, era 2013.